Welcome to Midwest Hammer, a Warhammer podcast for experienced and new Warhammer nerds alike, hosted by two wonderful Midwesterners. I am your first host and Imperial Historian Sanguine.
Fathom, your resident Balkan war criminal and host. I am here to learn just as much as you guys. I have some knowledge on topics in Warhammer. Now, time for a quote.
Iron within, iron without. Today we will be discussing the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors. Their prime mark is Perturabo, also known as the Lord of Iron, the Breaker, and the Hammer of Olympia. Or Bo and Purdy by the community Purdy and Bo his sister. Purdy was raised, on a mountainous civilized world called Olympia, with cities that closely resembled ancient Greek civilizations from Terra. He was raised by the leader of a city on Olympia, and his name was Damokos, the Tyrant Lord of Lokos.
Nice name.
Perturabo was raised into war, a born genius, very strong, but his social abilities, on the other hand, never truly developed properly, best being described as a child prodigy with autism or a petulant
Let's
man-child.
go. Just like
Purdy's prime... Okay,
just like the community.
Yes. Purdy's primary ability was a photographic perfect memory, and also seeing into the eye of terror at all times.
What?
Even with his eyes closed, he still saw the eye of terror.
Whoa. So you're telling me that he always had like a camera view in his brain of what was going on at the Eye of Terror.
He basically just saw it in the distance, and then like could see demons and stuff spiraling in it, like basically just get this weird eerie chill from it, and then he just was like, oh, everybody must see this. They must just be pretending to like moving on with their day. And then I think eventually he put two and two together and was like, most people don't see that.
Like, I know he has autism, but that is the most autistic thing I've ever heard. Is like, oh yeah, everyone sees that, right? Everyone's just like pretending they don't. They're just being nice about it. You know, it's just boring for everyone to talk about because they all see it, obviously.
Yeah. He often was a very grumpy man, between seeing into the eye of terror all the time, and also seeing himself as a superior being. A staunch atheist in a world that believed in gods, and having creativity to match any. After an architecture, he desired to build and help people, but his father Damokos used him to fight and command the armies of Lokos, and the never-ending wars of Olympia, crafting unyielding weapons of war, including tanks and even more artillery pieces. He grew up in He grew with age to resent his father and his two fully human brothers, finding some very minimal solace in a relationship with his sister. Perturabo's purpose was conquest, at least to those around him. He desired to build civilization and help people. But he eventually set out to conquer the entire planet under the banner of his father, Damokos.
Okay. How does he have brothers? I mean, like, what? He would at least be like 8-9 feet tall.
Well, he crash landed in the mountains around Lokos, and basically he had a similar story to the Lion, where he was just a wild boy that eventually got picked up by the locals because they were like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
Yeah, but like, would no one question why he grows up to be 9 foot tall?
They basically Damokos's reasoning and whether or not this was political or just literal was, he was like, yeah, my son that I adopted because he's cool and a prodigy, and I need political power. Yeah, he's a gift from the gods. And obviously Perturabo going, no, there's no gods. And would often debate Priest on this matter too. And And it really puzzled people because Stamikos was obviously going, well, he's a gift from the gods, guys, come on. And then Perturabo would just go, nuh-uh, gods don't exist. He would spend hours upon hours debating the best minds that Olympia had to offer on this as well. Priests, philosophers, and he would debate about literally everything. Like basically had the life of a Greek noble.
AKA,
I mean, he was
I'm
considered the son of a leader of the city.
basically he has the life of a modern Reddit user.
I mean, combined with a Greek noble, yeah. He would actually sometimes he would be just foiling away in in the little tower in the fortress of Locus, and he would just be like drawing and playing Lego pretty much, and then his dad would come in and be like, "Hey son, I really love you. I'm glad that I found you, and I hope you don't mind, but we have these things that I want you to do." And then he would be like, "You're not my dad." Clearly, my dad is a man of higher purpose, and would not believe me a gift from the gods. And then Damokos would of course go, "Well, what being could create something says as powerful as you if they weren't a god?" And then they would just spend time going, no, gods aren't real." So
Bro, he's just like
basically,
the community.
Perturabo was just a hardcore atheist surrounded by terrible god worshippers. Oh,
He's a Reddit atheist.
he does kind of breathe the Reddit atheist moments, especially with how he reacts to a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, the Iron Warriors in the meantime were one of the biggest legions, despite their lack of Primarch, due to the very stable gene seed they had. They would have a very large legion. And they would keep this legion if not for their inherent battle strategy.
Wind your shit back. How does Perturabo get found?
Well, we'll talk about that later. We're going to talk about his legion's happenings when he's not found. So we'll get to that. Well, yeah, they would have very stable gene seed, and they would have been one of the biggest legions despite Perturabo's absence, if their battle strategy was basically sustained and unyielding assaults with lots of heavy weapons. So I mean, and they'd always desired to have victory at all cost. And this would be the downside of their style of combat for the most part. So
victory at all costs. The downside, the cost.
Victory at all costs. The downside: 3,000 Space Marines at least in every battle. And this whole style of combat would come to a head at a battle of a rogue forge world of Incadalion, which had one of the most significant damages to a Space Marine Legion seen before the Horus Heresy. And it had and no battle would rival it until the Horus Heresy, as far as just pure Space Marine casualties. 29,000 Iron Warriors would die in this battle. To the Rogue Titans and other Forge World creations that this whole entire Rogue Forge world would throw at them. And of course, they don't ask. These are Iron Warriors. They don't ask for help. Well, need help is for pussies. We do all the fighting here, okay? We're real men. We throw ourselves at the enemy until there's no until victory is assured.
Listen, every second man gets a bolter. When the guy with the bolter gets shot, pick up the bolter and continue shooting at the god robot.
No, you see, you think that the Iron Warriors are men of substance. They love having as many bolters as possible, heavy ones especially. Big weapons, hell yeah. Autocannons, wrist mounted. Oh yeah, a lot of
But
them.
why were they fighting Titans?
Well, I mean, they had. I'm sure they had loyalist titans there as well. It just the battle was so vicious that it still cost them 29,000 Space Marines. And odds are is that the Legion Master of the time probably didn't try to negotiate too much with the trade or the rogue Forge World because the Iron Warriors haven't particularly been known for diplomacy ever.
Okay, but like, here's my point.
And this is all before Perturabo gets introduced. It doesn't get better from here. Trust me.
I don't know, am I crazy for thinking that it would have just been better for them to like, huh?
Negotiate or orbitally bombard the planet. Yeah, no, they wanted to capture that
Or
force
just
world
like not keep on
so
throwing,
the Mechanicus could use it.
or like,
Yeah, yeah, but unyielding assaults are what they do, man. They're iron within, iron without. But and that saying wouldn't even come around until Perturabo came to existence, but or came to join them. The finding of Perturabo was kind of like strange. Basically, he just had a dream about climbing this mountain a bunch, and then he eventually just decided to do it because he thought he would find his real father there, aka the Emperor. Perturabo climbed this mountain, made it almost all the way there, started collapsing down a little bit, and then someone reaches out, lifts his hands up, and then there's this immaculate golden man, obviously the God Emperor, and then a few of the custodians surrounding him. And the God Emperor basically just goes, "My son." And then he goes, "Yes, I was right." That's basically what Perturabo was like. I knew I had a father that
now,
I knew I had a father that was better than the one that I already had.
Perturabo's face when his father is called the God Emperor. Damn it.
Well, he was just the Emperor by this point, the Emperor of Mankind. So thankfully, but obviously he would be like, "Oh yeah." And then surprisingly, Perturabo was like, I love you, Dad. I will love to be with you." And the Emperor's light actually dimmed his the Eye of Terror in his vision. So, I mean, it couldn't be forever. Obviously, the Emperor grabs him, says, "Will you fight for me?" And the Perturabo says, "Heck yeah, man!" And they go off. He was united with his legion, and and then obviously the visions come back when the Emperor's not around. So, but the unfortunate events following the conflicts of Enkeladion would not stop. They would not cease when Perturabo was reunited with his legion. Thanks to the imperfect record that the Iron Warriors now had, the Perfectionist Primarch would have the legion decimated. So 1/10 of all Iron Warriors were to be selected at random and beaten to death by the other 9. And this was to harden the Legion like iron.
The West has fallen. Millions must die.
Yeah, so after they lost 29,000 Space
Chud
Marines,
Perturabo?
the remaining Space Marines had to go through with the decimation. And then he also integrated a lot of the customs of Olympia into his legion, along with recruiting now from Olympia, and he put his father in as a puppet, pretty much. But the going on from this, the Iron Warriors were to fight in the most brutal of war zones. Their unquestioning and fiercely loyalty to Perturabo was to be unchallenged. For they feared the ire of the temperamental Primarch. The Legion would have many warsmiths functioning as its commanders in grand companies. So warsmiths were a rank above captains in the Iron Warriors, and the warsmiths were basically just people who they were captains by all means, but the way that they functioned was basically as secondaries and tertiary commanders to Perturabo himself. So they most certainly functioned pretty much mostly independent. Obviously, with the goal in mind of being completely successful no matter what. And And there are plenty of these warsmiths that came around, but the best of them were put in a group called the Trident, which would be three warsmiths handpicked by Perturabo to be, or warsmiths or captains handpicked by Perturabo to be basically his personal advisors. And I say captain because there was one that slightly annoyed Perturabo, but he valued his basically what he had to say, so he decided to put him on there anyway, but not give him the position of warsmith, just to challenge him pretty much. Like you could do better, and I don't like the way you talk to me, but I do value your input. So any questions related to the warsmiths?
But basically, like, how do I want to put this? Warsmiths are above like captain. They're like commanders almost. I would say
They're the people directly underneath Perturabo.
so they're like
themselves.
commanders, yeah, like in military structure.
Yeah. And some legions would have what they call lord commanders, or which are like would be technically a step above what Perturabo has as warsmiths. But his warsmiths basically functioned the same way as lord commanders did, but there was just a lot more of them. So it was basically like anybody who he said, "You're pretty good at your job. Here's a grand company. Go deal with it. Go deal with this problem that I'm going to send you on." And they got that name for a reason because I mean Iron Warriors are very industrialist legion, so they like to they like their numbers, they have a very industrial aesthetic, and a lot of times these guys would also be very good at making weapons and smithing.
Hmm.
Now this does kind of sound like a tech marine, but do not get me mixed up here, because Perturabo absolutely hated the Mechanicus because they believed in a god. So Perturabo oftentimes would try to deal with the Mechanicus as least as possible, which is another reason why they kind of have a self-reliance, kind of the self-reliant, kind of iron within kind of, belief to them. But yeah, these warsmiths would ruthlessly command troops sent to the Iron Warriors, and these troops, along with the Imperial Guard, and other groups sent to them, would be basically treated like cattle in battle. And this eventually got so bad that Perturabo himself was basically generals would refuse to give Perturabo any troops that weren't penal legions, or people that were already like guardsmen that were censured for death penalties, because they knew that these men would have their lives thrown away like cattle. So because losses are not a concern with Perturabo. He's just, as long as the mission is complete, that's what truly matters. Victory at all cost. But they would fight in many campaigns, including the Fall of the Black Judges, the pacification of Shirvan, the Wa Mashog, compliance of Ashrakir Spile, and the Novus and Naki campaign. And these were all just campaigns that they fought alongside other Space Marine legions and stuff. Some of those will be talked about later, but some of them are just kind of like, well, they fought orcs, they fought this group, the other. And a lot of those would pale in comparison to a lot of the other campaigns that they fought in. But basically, the gist of these campaigns was that the Iron Warriors were super brutal in their tactics, and then this kind of pushed everyone, all the other Primarchs, away from Perturabo, because they really didn't care for his kind of like grim resolve, and he wasn't really that great at to talk to, because he would just kind of be an asshole the whole time. But and he would even go as far as burning a victory painting that depicted an Imperial fist holding up a banner while there was only one Iron Warrior apothecary removing the gene seed of a fallen Iron Warrior in the foreground, because he was jealous. and obviously this pushed away Rogadorn, especially, who thought he was just careless and and hot-headed, pretty much. Because I mean, Rogadorn is basically just a brick. So this was a raging storm, like versus a brick wall, pretty much. So,
Hmm.
and this would later also get this relationship would also later sour, because Perturabo was not assigned to the task of being the Praetorian of Terra, which was basically just building the Imperial Palace. That role would befall to the Imperial Fists, and henceforth Rogadorn as well. And Perturabo was very angry about that, because he really wanted that job, because he wanted to play Lego, and that was a job where he basically played Lego, and and he didn't want to have to do all these brutal wars and campaigns that the Emperor was having him do.
So wait, who got the job instead of him?
Rogadorn of the Imperial Fist.
But the Imperial Fists have like building capacity.
Yeah, they're the other building legion.
Oh
so,
yeah, I guess they do
so there's
build
a reason why these two
fortifications,
are
don't
rivals,
they?
is because they're both the build fortification and siege people. So this little meme is siege fortify, because that's their rivalry, is that one fortifies and the other one will siege it. And this is basically the theme of their relationship after certain events we will get into shortly. But yeah, he was really really mad about the fact that Rogadorn got this role, because he didn't like Rogadorn for many reasons. And then he also thought he would be better at the role because, like I said, he wanted to build, he didn't want to fight. And he was consistently thrown into the worst conflict possible, because he didn't say no. He refused to say no out of both pride and arrogance. The Emperor would go, kill these dangerous Xenos, and most legions would go, nuh-uh. We want to do something that's a little better, please, Dad. And the Emperor would go, okay. And then they would be like, hey, Perturabo, can you do this? And then Perturabo would be like, yes, father. And then he would just be angry about it the entire time he was doing it.
I mean, like
Which,
he's like, can I get some more dad time? My visions are giving me headaches, and he's like, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but if you go kill that nasty Xeno species, sure.
well, the Emperor would send him on these tasks, because and the Emperor would usually assign plenty of those primarchal tasks. It just, some of them would refuse or ask or reason with the Emperor, being like, hey, wouldn't be good for my legion for this reason or this reason. And then a lot of times the Emperor would go, all right, I'll just find somebody else to do it. And then that usually ended up landing on Perturabo's desk. And he went, fine, fuck it. Which is, he basically never stood up for himself. So that was probably, how he said petulant man child. That's also maybe a little autistic. Yeah, but the worst of these campaigns would be against the Harud, a time-altering.
Oh,
Basically, there were time-altering Xenos. Uh, that would basically send their, like. They would basically
into
send
the future.
you and your weapons forward
Yes,
in time
I've heard about them.
and age you.
That's the scariest concept. Didn't one of his legion get hit by it like pretty badly, and that's how they know?
We're going to talk about him in a second. So the first thing he did, I mean, they were pursuing these guys, but deep into the conflict and where most of the story comes in, is Perturabo sent this gentleman named Barbarous Dantiuk. He was sent to a group of planets called the Volpa Straits. And he had only about around 300 space marines and penal guardsmen, and they were basically going to function as the anvil, while the rest of the Legion pursued the Harad and functioned as the hammer in this plan. Dantiuk's company reinforced one of the main planets and fortified it well, and then the Harad finally showed up. And when they did, the Harad basically sent their or they basically sent their civilian cast forward. And when they did this, basically all of the unmodified humans, like penal soldiers and stuff that were sent alongside Dantioch, basically aged into dust in about a minute or less. And then the civilian cast of the Harad would basically ran, or whatever could be close enough to a civilian cast in the weird Xenos species, were sent underneath in tunnels underneath the fortifications and basically make a giant time alteration field that would age people, and they were just functioning as to amplify this effect because certain Harad had a better like a more powerful ability for this. But if you have enough of them, because there are millions of them that were rushing at these fortifications at the same time, it basically just amplifies the effect. And then the Harad would send all them down. The weapons and the walls and of the fortifications, along with the Iron Warriors themselves, would start to age. And as soon as all these this Harad got underneath the fortification, the warriors of the Harad would charge forward. And by the time they made it to the gate had rusted and crumbled into dust. And this effect was slowly wearing down the Space Marines and their weapons as well. So sometimes when you shot at a Harad, it would the bolt would either blow up preemptively or would just crumble into dust. But sometimes it would also just randomly hit it. So it just kind of depended on luck, really. Because obviously, if something's moving faster towards it, it's going to affect it less than if it was moving, I guess, slower towards the object.
Ah, so the Harad are using a hacked client.
I guess that's one way to put it. But they push forward. They eventually overwhelmed Dantioch's company, forcing a retreat, and the aging Dantioch, far beyond his peak efficiency as an Astartes, forcing him and the very few Marines that remained of his company to a retreat. While this was happening, though, Perturabo and a particular temporal expert of the Mechanicus were making a temporal device. So basically, there was eventually Perturabo wanted to make a time bomb. So basically, something that would nullify the effect of the Harad, but it would blow up. But this Mechanicus guy goes, yeah, but what if we just didn't make it blow up and we just made it into like a field? And then Perturabo was like, you're based. I don't like your kind usually, but you know what you're doing. And then it was used to weaken, if not nullify, the effects of the Harad, and this was successfully used in a test against the Harad. But basically the Mechanicus would wheel a vehicle, like a troop carrier that they had, but it would just be filled up with this device, and it basically made a radius where this effect wouldn't hurt the Space Marines and the Mechanicus that were with it. I mean, even in this battle, Perturabo got affected, and he was like, yeah, I physically feel slightly older. Which, for a Primarch, I mean, he didn't appear any older. But just the idea of him being like, oh, shit, I feel like I'm a little bit older is crazy, you know? Because, I mean, for what it's worth, Primarchs, as far as we know, can basically live forever if not killed by another Primarch, so, or someone else. And in some cases, some just refuse to die regardless, so. Is there any comment so far?
Sorry?
Is there any comment so far?
Not really. So basically, they're fighting just to reiterate, since it's been a hot second. They're fighting the Harad. The Harad have hacked client. They have lag machines. They could screw around with your connection to the game. I'm just gonna say they can do time travel, but forcible time travel on other people.
Well, they usually don't reverse your life force. It usually goes
they just
forward.
throw you forward.
They basically accelerate time.
They throw you forward in time, but not space. So you just rapidly age. Most people disintegrate into dust.
After a few minutes, and then Space Marines, which are designed to live longer, usually take a while to die. But this is also, funnily enough, this actually disproved the idea because no one at the
Knew if Space
time
Marines were immortal.
knew whether or not Space Marines were immortal. This actually proved that they weren't, like just like
Yep.
age-wise. So they could literally be aged into non-existence. But supposedly, from the theories that the Iron Warriors made after this, it would take thousands of years to kill for a Space Marine to die out. So, like, the oldest living Space Marine that we know of
Dante?
is like 1,200 years old, which is Dante. That without chaos effect, or machines, but or dreadnoughts, but but most unafflicted, unedited Space Marine has lived for 1,200 years, and he's only just barely starting to slow down. So yeah, and that's in modern lore, and that's a Blood Angel that we will talk about later. But so Dantiok was aged to an extreme amount. He retreated. His men were going to go back to Perturabo after this battle where they used that device. They went back up to their fleet. And they returned to the Ironblood, which was the capital ship of the Iron Warriors. So the word of Dantiok's defeat came to Perturabo personally from Dantiok. And Dantiok was to be exiled for this failure. And Perturabo said, "I never want to see your face again," which Dantiok took fairly literally, and crafted a mast helmet. While it was still hot, he sealed it onto his face, and dunked his head in cold water.
Hey,
But Dantiok will be a story for
fucking
another time
excuse me?
past this, because yes, so he was like, "Okay, you don't want to see my face again, Dad? Fine." He heats up a helmet, puts it on his head, seals it, puts his head in water. He literally forged a mask and then submerged his head in it. And after submerged his head in water after sealing it onto him. So basically, the mask just melded to his face.
Why?
But yeah,
That reminds me of an Iron Man comic I've heard about.
it's similar enough. Yeah.
But like,
Dantiok is basically the ironest of Iron Warriors. Or no, he's not the ironest of Iron Warriors, but he's definitely up there. As far as Dad said something, time to take it literally. Yeah, the Iron Warriors have humorous moments, but I think it's mostly just because they're assholes, and not actually because they think like they know it's funny. They're just way too literal sometimes. They're not the most literal Space Marines, but they're definitely up there. And I think the Iron Hands probably are worse when it comes to that. But Perturabo was a few hours after banishing Dantiok. He basically went to the bow of the ship where the planning process was, which was also apparently some of the warsmiths belonged to a masonry guild on Olympia, and they kind of kept that going a little bit. So they're basically they went to a planning room that was in the front prow of the ship. That was also where warsmiths met and usually debated on combat. Basically, they spent hours going, "Oh, what to do, and Perturabo during this time, as far as I'm aware, was kind of just brewing in his at the defeat of Dantiok and going like, well, what do we do? And Perturabo walks into the room, goes, "I have a plan," and then everybody's like, "What the fuck? Where'd he come from?" Because he was locked away in his room. And basically, what he comes into is them basically playing Warhammer on on a table in their ship. They're literally rolling dice for probability of battle outcomes, and also doing like videographic like simulations as well. So they're doing dice probability. Some of them are, and some of them are actually doing like AI, basically like program simulations of the potential battles as well. Basically, they came to the conclusion that at least a few thousand Space Marines would have to die to defeat the Harad in future battles, and like actually win the conflict. But this is when a random officer of the ship, communications officer, just comes sprinting, panting. You know, like hands on his knees, like, "Ah, sir, I have a message." And then he looks up and Perturabo goes, "You know mortals aren't supposed to be in this area. What do you have for me?" And just death stares him. And then he goes, "Sir, there's word from the bridge. You must run up there. Someone wants to personally deliver you a message." And they have been expecting supply columns from Olympia at some point. So they were basically Perturabo goes, "Well, maybe that's here." So Perturabo rushes up to the bridge as fast as he can for being, Primarch and very heavy armor. And he basically interrogates his communications officer by grabbing him, lifting him up in the air, and just screaming at him the entire time. And eventually, the communications officer just breaks down and actually tells him because the Iron Warrior wanted to get like deliver the message in person, but obviously he wasn't having any of that. So eventually, the message was that Olympia, the homeworld of Perturabo, had rebelled.
Who had rebelled? Sorry.
No, his homeworld of Olympia
Oh.
had declared open rebellion against the Imperium.
Uh-oh.
So Perturabo basically immediately dropped the conflict with the Herod. He was like, "Ah, shit. We'll worry about this later." And he basically picked up everybody, said, "We're going home." But before doing that, he crushed the communications officer in a blind rage, and basically shocked everyone in the command room into a stunned silence for about 40 minutes as he was just staring at the corpse. And eventually he like borderline crying just said, "Go back to doing your jobs.
So
I need to go." And then he went back into his
I
room.
blanked out. Who the hell did he shoot? I'm guessing the.
He didn't shoot. He literally strangled to death one of the communications officer that gave him the message.
Why?
At blind rage. It's a also during his unification of something I forgot to mention. During his original unification of Olympia, someone had tried to assassinate him and his sister, and then he literally strangled the assassins to death. While while his sister was basically yelling at him, "Leave them for the interrogators. We need to know who sent them." And he was just screaming, "Who sent you?" as he's ripping out their throat. So he's kind of prone to these blind rages. So yeah, he's definitely an interesting fellow. But was there anything you wanted to comment on that, or
That is very. I'm just like I'm just getting the mental image of him trying to interrogate people that he's actively like murdering.
Yeah, it happens too. It's a common occurrence for him. Is just to fly off the rails. Like he's actually mentally, like severely mentally ill by this point, and Perturabo would travel back to his home world to confront the rebels. He would sit down in a council full of these diplomats after a second. Basically, they sent whoever, and then he goes, "No, bring your finest nobles." And then some of them did that. Some of them just kind of went, whatever, and sent whoever. But they'd basically ask for him to join sides in the rebellion, like be like, "Well, we don't like the Imperium, but this and that," or "We like the Imperium, but we need you to stop stealing so many of our sons and for the Legion because we don't have any sons." And then eventually he goes, "What do you guys think? This is a negotiation?" And then he says, "We're not here to negotiate." So he eventually settled on destroying Olympia, one city at a time. And as a demonstration of this thought, he told them about it blatantly. He was like, "Well, if we're here to crush a rebellion. We don't negotiate with traitors." And then he basically orbitally bombarded, like with like a full lance battery, just the nearest city to this negotiation, and it just got completely leveled. And as this blast is settling out and pushing all the energy away from it, and like knocking these people over because they're probably only a few miles away from the city. He basically just says, "All right, no time for negotiations. You're all dead." And then his the Iron Warriors just open up on the crowd.
Hmm.
And then he would go about systematically destroying every city on
But isn't
Olympia.
that where he recruited for his legion?
Yep.
Uh,
But not all of his Astartes would agree with this idea, and the
oh,
ones that did usually would be destroyed by their squad mates in fear of retribution from the Primarch himself. So someone would go, "I don't know about this, guys," and then he would immediately be beaten to death, or stabbed, or shot, usually.
it just seems like a terrible idea considering that I don't know how many other. I know, like, with a lot of legions, they only recruit from the home world of the Primarch.
Well, that's more chapters usually, but the legions would mostly do that too, depending on the legion. But but the Astartes that didn't agree with it were killed off pretty fast. But all these different sieges, the entire world was sieged. Like independent groups and companies would siege different cities. But this all eventually led up to the siege of Locus, where Perturabo would personally lead the siege, just kind of as a vendetta against Olympia itself. When he arrived to the like hall of Olympia, like the castle, he would find his adoptive father, dead, because his adoptive father just died of old age because he was like at this point like 200 years old or something. The body modifications and all just kind of like kept alive as long as possible. And then he would look over at the throne, and then guess who was sitting up there?
Hmm.
His sister. So him and his sister would have a talk that basically boiled down to her calling him a petulant man-child, which is where a lot of that joke comes from. And because she actually says that, and basically her going, "Well, I wasn't really in favor of the rebellion. I was going to side with you, but then you kind of killed every single diplomat that was in the in the first meeting, and I kind of realized, hey, this my brother has completely lost it." And this really pissed off Perturabo in the moment, believe it or not.
Wonder what's gonna happen.
So what he does, guess what he does?
Strangles his sister to death, maybe? Crazy idea.
He grabs her, picks her up, lifts her as high as he can, and basically just villain monologues to her as he strangles her to death, and goes, "No, you're wrong," and then kills her. And then basically he gets, because him and his sister is basically the one that he came closest to like having an actual loving relationship with. He would walk outside to see chains of his people that he, like the ancestors of the people that he once ruled over, being let out for either slavery or like recruitment into the Legion, forced recruitment. And he would be like, "Yeah, we're done here." And in his sadness, he'd basically confide in one of his, I think his first captain, and be like, I deeply regret what happened here." And his first captain just goes, "Yeah, sir, it's all good and stuff, but we literally can't have the Legion seeing you like this. We must get out of here." Because, if the Legion saw him like that, what would they think of like what they just did as well, Because they're the ones carrying out the executions for the most part, and the burning.
Crazy that they're all pretty much like murdering their home planet because Perturabo couldn't fucking do diplomacy for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, the people that like the Space Marines that thought about quitting it were the guys that were like, yeah, I literally grew up in a village that looked exactly like this.
This
Like, what are
may
we
very
doing?
well be the same village.
And then the other Space Marine would go, "What are you suggesting? They betray Perturabo, you fucking fool?" And then would just either shoot them or like stab them to death. And it was bad. They were, like I said, they were handled fairly efficiently.
I don't know. It just sounds like all of Perturabo's story is just literally being a petulant man-child and causing more issues because of it.
But he was a petulant man-child that put his money where his mouth is. You know, like he, unironically, was probably one of the best generals that the Imperium had.
Yeah, but what's that?
And he was extremely. Albeit he was extremely like willing to just throw people's lives away like they're nothing and stuff like that, but he got the job done. And him as a personal guy, he was fairly smart. He obviously he disdained the use for like melee weapons in combat for the most part. So his like weapon systems for basic personal weapons were basically twin wrist-mounted heavy bolters on each arm that were like had modified ammunition and stuff, and then he had a bunch of other things on his armor, mostly ranged weapons, and then he had a lot of like things implemented into his skull, which they kind of look like butcher's nails, but they're basically command. They basically upload information straight to his brain. So he will literally just sit in a battle, being like, absorbing all the information and then basically dealing out perfect orders, almost to the level of some Necron generals. Like the efficiency was there, you know, because he believed that any weakness should be like, you know, trained out of you.
Literally, he's just a Reddit atheist chud. Like this character.
But yeah, he had literal battle information uploaded to his mind. So a lot of times he would be put in charge of a conflict to the dismay of his brothers because he was literally just a fucking battle computer. Because he knew exactly what needed to be done, but then obviously his plans had to be altered because a lot of times they were just throw people away until we succeed.
You know, if I throw away about 100 Space Marines on this small battle, we have a guaranteed chance of victory. Sir.
Yeah.
It's a small village.
It's like if a battle plan saves most of your Marines, but it's only a 75% success rate. The one where all of them die is the better plan. if it means they succeed 100% of the time. But yeah, Horus shortly after this would come to Perturabo after they left the planet and be like, I jumped forward a little bit on accident, but basically Perturabo, after killing his sister and destroying his home planet, was like, the Emperor will never forgive me for this. Which I personally think is untrue, but...
Bro, the Emperor has done...
The Emperor has done far worse.
Literally just ask, what was it, Lorgar? Just ask Lorgar.
Yeah, the burning of Monarchia.
Like, the Emperor's personally done worse shit.
We will get into later.
The Emperor might be the one person who might not even give much of a damn.
Yeah, but you know who definitely didn't give a damn? And who came to met Perturabo first after it? Horus.
Oh, no.
Horus, shortly after this, manipulated Perturabo into thinking the Emperor would never forgive him, and then he was like, "Hey, but you know who will?"
No, Horus.
Me.
Horus is coming to gas.
Horus by this point was already corrupted by chaos.
No, Horus is using the 3 Gs: gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
What?
It's a strategy. That's why he's so
okay.
He do be girl bossing all over the place. I mean, he just girl bossed over fucking Perturabo.
Yeah. It's one way to put it. Horus, the main girl boss.
He is the supreme, he is the master of gatekeeping, he is the master of gaslighting, and he is the superior girl boss. Like, come on.
But yeah,
He nearly girl bossed over the Emperor.
Perturabo after this would basically fall straight into Horus's hands without any resistance. He'd be like, "God damn it! I guess you're right, son or brother." And then Perturabo would then be instrumental in planning the drop site massacre. He basically positioned everything, found the exact landing zone that would be perfect for it, and then also decided like who would go in first and who would be the surprise. I'm a traitor, which also went into the Ispan 3 where certain traitor legions would massacre their men. But yeah, so basically the Emperor's children, I think World Eaters, Sons of Horus, and yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. And then would go and massacre their people on Isfahan 3. Some people escaped, which kind of played in Horus's hands pretty well. And they warned the Imperium about, hey, Horus betrayed her. These two other legions traitors. And then everybody went, okay, send in 7 legions to deal with it. And it was the Raven Guard, the Iron Hands, then the Salamanders, along with the 4 other legions that were to come in afterwards, would be the Word Bearers, the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, and there was one more, I think. I always forget the 4th one for some Alpha Legion. There we go. You would all be reinforcing. So obviously, I think we talked about this a little bit in the Emperor's Children episode already. The Iron Hands and the other 2 charge in. The 4 traitor or legions that we didn't know were traitor but turned out to be traitor drop in. The Salamanders and the Raven Guard go, let's reinforce with these guys. Ferrus Manus goes, nuh-uh, and charges in anyway. The Salamanders and Raven Guard start walking towards the line of Word Bearers and all the other guys and the Iron Warriors. And then immediately shots start ringing out as they walk up this hill. And just thousands of Salamanders and Raven Guard die instantly. And the Iron Warriors would play a big role because they're the big guys who use a lot of heavy bolters and other heavy weapons. So they were the main guys sitting on the hill going, time to gun into the crowd. And then the Word Bearers decided, let's try it. We should charge in and meet the Raven Guard in battle. So funnily enough, the nice little Iron Warriors would occasionally their bullets would and their weapons would stray a little off course, and then hit a Word Bearer occasionally on accident. And when Argol Tal, the first Gale Vorback of the Word Bearers, so basically a demon demon host of the Word Bearers, said, "Hey guys, can you stop fucking shooting us?" Our unknown Iron Warriors captain would respond with, "Have faith, Word Bearer."
Oh no, God. No.
And that was the quote that I said was so funny earlier.
God.
So they would just shoot in the friendly units, being like, well, if we kill them, we kill the Raven Guard too. And they obviously hated so the Iron Warriors were on the traitor side, but they didn't really have a relationship with Chaos, so they kind of hated Chaos. And would occasionally, like, if an Iron Warrior was mutated, he would just cut off his mutation. And this kept on as a practice for most of the time after the Horus Heresy as well. But yeah, no, the Word Bearers are the exact opposite. They embraced Chaos wholeheartedly and wanted a symbiotic relationship with Chaos. So the Iron Warriors did not like the Word Bearers at all, even during the Horus Heresy. Later, Perturabo, for his efforts of planning the entire thing, would be given Ferrus Manus's hammer, which was originally crafted by Fulgrim, with the Forge Breaker. And Perturabo would basically be instrumental in the whole Horus Heresy after this. His main role for most of it was playing babysitter. Because and mostly to his most chaos corrupted brothers like Fulgrim and Angron would be the ones that he was basically reining in all the time. So there's a funny little story. Fulgrim had pulled Perturabo off into a random conflict to just massacre civilians on an unnecessary small like world, just because Emperor's children, and Perturabo was not happy about this, as you could probably presume. Mister brooding and angry all the time.
Well, it's just like I don't know. It just seems like
So-
all the other legions have like fallen to like chaos or like have like some like chaos influence, right?
Yeah, but these guys are just like, oh well, the Emperor will never forgive us for our sins.
Yeah, no, but they've just got
Let's
like
fight
one
them.
sulking like otherwise loyalist chapter.
Or Legion, yeah. But no. So he would be like, hey Fulgrim, and in the battle planning room after the battle would be like, hey Fulgrim, come over here. And then he would show Fulgrim basically this Warhammer miniature of a Warhound Titan, and it's like the full sized like Warhound Titans that you would expect. And then he was like, yeah, Vulcan made this, and it's supposed to move, but I think it got knocked over when in a ship once or something. And then he goes, hey, can you take a look at it and listen to it? And basically Fulgrim goes, why are you playing with fucking toys, you fucking idiot? And then he's like, well, lean in and listen to it, please. And then Fulgrim gets closer to it, and then so he leans in to hear the humming of like the motors that are supposed to be in it. And then Perturabo's like, no, get a little closer,
Oh,
listen to it. And then Perturabo grabs the back of Fulgrim's head, just fucking lifts him up from the table a little bit, and just slams his head into the Warhound miniature, completely shattering the mini into thousands of pieces, and basically destroying Fulgrim's nose.
why?
So when I said Perturabo was a petulant man-child that could put his money where his mouth is, he was like, I'm serious. He was probably he's one of the strongest Primarchs, like physically. And then of course Fulgrim goes, brother, you're just mad because I'm the superior Primarch. I'm just better in general. Because he was already somewhat chaos corrupted by this point. And then Perturabo goes, yeah, if you're so fucking better, why am I the one that has the hammer? And then he just stares down at Fulgrim, and then Fulgrim basically just goes, oh, that means nothing to me, brother. And then he just whacks him with the hammer.
Where did he get the hammer from?
The horse gave it to him after I told you already. Horse gave the hammer to yeah.
That hammer.
So basically he just owns fucking Fulgrim, and Fulgrim's sitting on the ground crying afterwards because he had his face smashed in with a miniature, and then his chest whacked by a hammer, like a light whack, albeit, but still.
Hmm.
He basically just bullied Fulgrim because Fulgrim was pissing him off. But yeah, and then there was some fights and stuff on the way there, whole bunch of battles and stuff. One of the bigger ones was which I won't go into too much, was the first battle of Hydra Cordatus, which is a little less important to the history of the Legion. But it was just a big battle. And yeah, and then there was the Battle of Fall, the Assault of Idris, where basically he was playing rearguard. Perturabo was against the scattered remnants of the legions that died at Istvan, so just basically holding them off as they pushed towards it. And the big thing that happened, I talked about this in the Emperor's Children episode, was basically the whole Angel Exterminatus thing, where Fulgrim goes, I am I'm looking for the super weapon called the Angel Exterminatus that we can use to win the Siege of Terra. And then he gives like a cloak to Perturabo and goes, "Here, have this as a gift." And then Perturabo goes, "Sure, whatever." And then basically it sapped his life energy away because Fulgrim was trying to become a demon prince of Slaanesh. And then Perturabo would eventually figure this out, of course, because he's actually smart. And then he would go, well, you're a fucking asshole. I'm gonna fight you now. To fucking Fulgrim, and then he basically just pulled a fucking backbreaker move on Fulgrim, like knee over the back after a big fight, and then Fulgrim dying, not actually achieving killing Perturabo, would ascend to be a demon prince anyway because Slaanesh thought it was funny.
You tried. I'm gonna reward you anyways.
You tried real hard. I appreciated the attempt to kill a brother, so here you go. And then shortly after this whole event, they would eventually make it to Terra, where the Iron Warriors would be basically instrumental in the Siege of Terra because they are really good at sieging. That's basically their thing. And they would destroy several points and make several breaches in the walls of the Imperial Palace, and eventually make it to where the whole like plan of the Emperor eventually shifted from defend the palace to, all right, we need to figure something out. And then Horus going, well, the Dark Angels might be here soon, lowered the defenses of his flagship. You know the rest of the deal. But before this happened, and I think right before Horus died, Perturabo basically said, all of my brothers around me and pretty much every other Marine I'm fighting with is fucking Chaos Corrupted. I've been moved off the front line and replaced by the Death Guard. I'm kind of sick of this, and then just leaves.
Yeah.
They literally just break the fortifications and leave. Because obviously he hates Chaos. Everyone around him is Chaos Corrupted. I did miss something. Also, before the siege, he basically won a duel against Angron by starving him of melee combat and just riddling him with heavy bolters until he could whack him a few times, and then they flung him at a plant at Terra itself. So that's how Angron actually ended up being in the Siege of Terra. But that's besides the point. But yeah, that's it's just a cool moment. We'll talk more about it.
I thought Angron was pretty like because of Khorne. I thought he was just like immune to bullets.
He's not immune to bullets. He's more resistant. But when you have a thousand heavy bolters firing at you at once, it just kind of wears down his power over time. But yeah, Perturabo then after the whole siege was like, well, I just wrangled my brother. The other brother tried to kill me. Horus really isn't that sane anymore. I'm gonna fuck off. And then obviously, like I said, all the stuff with the whole like Emperor teleporting onto Horus's flagship getting crippled happened. Then the Scouring happened, which the Iron Warriors were pretty influential in because basically before they entered the Siege of Terra, the Eye of Terror. They built this giant space station fortification thing called the I forget what it was, the Indomitable Fortress or something. Let me look at Google this again because I forgot. Oh, the Eternal Fortress, sorry. And this battle would later be known as the Battle of the Iron Cage, because basically Perturabo goes, hey, Rogal Dorn, you won't siege the impossible fortress that I built. And then Rogal Dorn goes, oh, you fucking asshole, I sure fucking will. And then he basically says, I'm going to bring you back in an iron cage and present you in front of the Emperor, is what Rogal Dorn says, and that's why it's called that. That's why the name of the battle is that. And basically, basically Perturabo just hands the Imperial Fist probably the biggest L they've ever taken. He almost completely destroys the Imperial Fist, and literally the Imperial Fist would have died if the Ultramarines just didn't show up at the very last moment. Like Ramute I mean, basically saved Rogadorn and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Because Rogadorn was willing to throw away his life just to kill Perturabo, the chance at killing Perturabo. Because Rogadorn by this point was very angry at that everything that went on, especially the crippling of the Emperor. He was in his angry emo phase. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much everyone was as soon as half of the Space Marines went nutty.
Imperium burned, and the Emperor was crippled by this point. So then after that, everybody they go and find a demon world where Perturabo can go play Legos. In the actual fight of the Iron Cage, though, there was a bunch of Imperial Fist gene seed that was stolen from the Imperial Fist and then sacrificed to Chaos, which this is the one part of the lore I'm kind of iffy on and kind of hate, is that basically it's believed that Perturabo is dying from all the events that Fulgrim had with him. So that's believed to be the reason why Perturabo ascended to be an undivided demon prince. So, but the guy who hates Chaos being a demon prince is kind of stupid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But whatever. It's believed that he also may just be lying and be basically just modify himself with machines. It's unknown reasons. But the Iron Wares would be involved in both the Siege of Rax and an event called the 13th Black Crusade. I don't know if you've heard of that. But they were basically instrumental in the 13th Black Crusade as well. They helped Abaddon quite a bit. And as far as I am aware, I may have where's the do. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, that's most of what happened. But before we close off, though, there's also one other battle that I wanted to quickly touch on. There were two times that were pretty influential. So during the 13th Black Crusade, basically Warsmith Hanzu, which is a interesting gentleman, we will have a separate episode on at some point, who is one of the Iron Warriors Warsmiths, basically just invaded Ultramar and did a number on Ultramar and the fucking what's it called, the Ultramarines. So, but eventually he would start to get pushed back and then just retreat back into the Eye of Terror. But there's also another conflict called the Second Battle of Hydra Cordatus, and it's just basically a titanic, world-ending battle that happened after the Siege of Terra, or after in the 41st millennia, far after the Siege of Terra and all that. But there was also a first-time Battle of Hydra Cordatus, which was during the actual Horus Heresy and all that. But the second battle would be known particularly for some of the technology that was deployed by the by the by the Iron Warriors themselves. So this whole thing would be under the command of, I think, Warsmith, Barbara, and Fogg. And some interesting technologies were deployed. Also Hanzu as well.
What?
But they actually at one point deployed a Tyranid that they had infected, a Tyranid warship, which they infected with the Obliterator virus, which basically turns people into half demon, basically half demon Terminators. Usually is what is usually what it is, where their weapons grow out of their arms and stuff. Yeah. But basically, They had this thing that they injected with the Obliterator virus, and then it would quite literally just be used to deploy Titans. So in the Battle of Hydrocrodatus, a Tyranid bioship was used by the Iron Warriors to deploy a multitude of Titans onto the battlefield. And this is probably, in my opinion, one of the funniest and most interesting bits of lore that the Iron Warriors have, is they took a fucking Tyranid bioship and used it to drop Titans onto the battlefield of Hydrocrodatus.
What the fuck?
Yep, it would literally just pop the Titans out, and then use the massive bioship tentacles to literally just place them down wherever it needed it. And it deployed, I think, a dozen, or at least a few Titans were deployed out of this thing. So the Iron Warriors are inventive. They would also be known for something called the Demunculaba, which we will not be talking about in this episode.
Oh, the Demon Kilabla, the Demon Kulabula.
The Demunculaba, yeah. But that was also Hansu's creation, so we will definitely have an episode on him in the future, because he is probably the most influential Iron Warrior, and he's actually known as the Half-Breed. You know why he's called the Half-Breed? Is because his gene seed is spliced between Iron Warriors and Imperial
Oh, dear Christ.
So he is extremely disliked or at one point was extremely disliked, along with a lot of the other half-breeded Iron Warriors by the I guess firstborn Iron Warriors would be the best. I guess the veterans of the Long War would probably be better, because the Chaos Skulls, the Force Heresy, and all the subsequent events, the Long War after that. But, so the veterans of the Long War didn't really care for the half-breeds and the Legion. But Hansu is so ridiculously good at fighting and commanding that he eventually rose to be the rank of Warsmith anyway. So if that tells you anything about how fucked that guy is, then yeah, he was responsible for, I think he was responsible for the Tyranid bioship, along with the Demunculaba and several other creations that are just cursed. Both cursed and brutal, and then he's also just a very influential man in the modern Iron Warriors or 41st millennia post Iron Warriors Legion. So, yeah. And it is believed that the Iron Warriors are in M42 are, thanks to the whole splitting of the galaxy and all that, are more involved in conflicts now. So they are out and about and doing stuff. But they always did stuff, because Iron Warriors are good at doing stuff. They like sieging. If there's a time they can siege, they'll do it. If there's a time they can defend, they'll build with Lego.
Aww.
But yeah, so the Primarch, though, that honestly just wanted to sit around playing Lego and building cool castles, was used as a war machine and basically just absolutely hated his existence until he decided that being the good guy was not his idea anymore. It was basically the conclusion of Perturabo, in my opinion. And also just being grumpy the whole time. I wanted you that.
I want to play with Lego. No more war.
I want to build a canal, and I want to build a hydroduct and palace. And then the Emperor was like, "Nuh-uh, Harud." I wouldn't blame him, if I'm being honest.
Fuck Xeno. No more toy.
Harud? I don't like this. I'm gonna rebel against the Emperor. Which, I mean, that even wasn't the reason. Wasn't the reason. It was just because he was upset. He was just sad that he killed his sister and believed he had to, and then a bunch of other problems, mental illness. On that note, I think we've reached the conclusion. We will talk about Barbarist Antioch and Ironsmith Hansu at a separate time, because both of those are very interesting characters. Barbarist Antioch would go on to be a loyalist and have some influence in helping certain groups, so we may discuss that later, his influence on those, but we will definitely make an episode on him at some point, along with Hansu.
So just like more of like an
Yeah.
overarching thing here to like summarize. We have Perturabo, who is a petulant Reddit atheist Chub Lego user. Or Chud Lego user, I should say.
I want to build my Legos. You're not my
Who
real
basically
dad.
spent his entire life having daddy issues until he met his actual father, who gave him like brief relief from his schizophrenia.
A brief respite, and then it was just more daddy
Yeah,
issues.
like he gave him brief respite from his schizophrenia, but only for that.
I don't know if I would classify anything he had as schizophrenia. I think he was just legitimately autistic. Like in between, there's a few prime marks that I kind of give that to, but I also think it's big. You could honestly designate like you could literally like designate the emperor as with having like psychosis, like a form of it, like medical psychosis, and a lot of his sons had severe mental issues, probably because they were part of his genome. So,
I mean, to be.
but we'll get into that in our next episode.
Oh dear, that's my episode. What?
So, if you guys liked and enjoyed this discussion and this I guess lecture on the Iron Warriors, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/MidwestHammer, and if you'd like to tune in for our next episode, it will be on the Emperor. And I bid you adieu. We will potentially have a YouTube coming up at some point soon. I'm still working on that. It's my fault that it's not up yet, but we will see. We may do gaming content and other things on that as well, mostly related to Warhammer. But yeah, I wish everyone have a good night.
Have a good night, y'all.
All right, you all have a good one.
Yeah.
And